welcome back to another sketchbook video, or shall I say art book video, because if you've been following along in this series thus far, we are creating rendered beautiful spreads so that we can have a piece of art to look at by the end of it, which is why I like to call these sketchbooks art books instead, whereas my actual sketchbooks I like to call shit books, but you know, to each their own. But for me, I want to focus on creating more polished, finished, rendered spreads again as a comic artist and storyboard artist who primarily does a lot of sketching and illustration stuff without much painting or coloring. I kind of miss that, you know, so that's what we're going to be focusing on in today's video. So before we begin, I first wanted to shout out that Succubushes Volume 1 is back in stock. After, I guess, almost over a year, it took me a long time to get them reduced down to this size because this is the first time that I'm releasing this version of Succubushes where it is the small miniature 6x6 version compared to its predecessor, which was this bigger size, which, you know, that was beginning of my self-publishing days. So I've learned a lot from then, but for any of you who are interested in ordering Succubushes Volume 1, since there was a high demand or ask for it, it's down in the links below in my Etsy shop. So check it out if you want to see Volume 1 of the series, and if you want to have a follow-up, there's also Volume 2. So along with that, there's also stickers and prints in my Etsy shop, so if you're thinking of any, you know, New Year's gifts, I guess, because by the time this video is uploaded, it's already late December, mid-December, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, thank you all again for your many years of support, so check it out in the links below if you would like to read my comics. So getting back to this video, we are going to be drawing flight attendants. Why are we drawing flight attendants? Because this sketchbook's theme is going to be about travel, because I love traveling. I love seeing the world and I love exploring other cultures, meeting other people, and drawing the things that I see when I'm there. So before I even dive into the parts about traveling, I just primarily want to focus on the build up to travel, because not only is it going to help me make this sketchbook have a progressive vibe to it, like a story where the beginning is like, ooh, getting ready to travel, then we finally see the travel stuff in the middle, then the end is me going home or something. It's at least kind of like a way for me to warm up back to traditional art again. I think this is probably my 6th or 7th spread so far. So as we're doing this, I'm starting to realize what art supplies I need when I do these things. So I used to use these pens a long time ago when I first applied to Cal Arts, but the Sakura Micron pens have been my, you know, foundational pen thing that I've always used when I was a student, and I kind of just stopped using them for a while because once I started working, it's like, okay, everything I do is digital now, so what's the point of using them? But now I can finally bring them back into my workflow because I'm starting to take sketchbooks and traditional art seriously again. So yeah, I feel like as we move along in this sketchbook and as I get more spreads done and I refamiliarize myself with the world of traditional art, I can finally start to draw, you know, the spreads of the many different countries I've been to, and I really want to do them justice because I am afraid of making those spreads look ugly. Like, the point of this is to make everything look beautiful. So if anything is gonna look ugly in this sketchbook, it's gonna be the beginning few pages of the parts before I land in those locations. So anyway, you know, I put a lot of pressure on myself when it comes to like rendered, finalized pieces, which is why I guess, you know, I alleviate myself of that when I become a storyboard artist or just doing comics in general. It's like you relieve the pressure of doing very finished work because you're doing quicker, looser, fast-paced stuff. But, you know, doing this again really just brings me back to my art student days, because that's when I was working on sketchbooks all the time. But that also brings me to the topic of today's video about why art students scare me. So, you know, they scared me while I was a student, and they also still continue to scare me even though I am now a working professional. And I don't know, maybe this is something that some of you guys will understand. I don't know if it's just me, but art students, I feel like, are gonna be some of the most critical people you will ever meet in the art world. Like, yes, you will also have very critical people who are in the professional world of art, animation, whatever art industry you're in. So don't get me wrong, but I feel like when it comes to the art itself, I feel like art students are going to be hypercritical on things because, you know, they're in a position in life where they are preparing to become the best of the best and land jobs and begin their careers. So they're hardcore studying this shit and spend their livelihood just improving on their skills. So it's a no-brainer that their minds are so fixated on art improvement, what could be improved, does this look good or not? And that's great. I've been there before. I was an art student, around like 10 years ago now, which is pretty scary to say, but I remembered being in that position, which is why sometimes when I think of the way I used to think, I'm just like, God damn, I was really so hypercritical of everything at that age. But there are also so many other things about art students that scare me, which brings me to some, I guess, mini story times from my times as an art student, but also just things I've learned as I went through art school, graduated, and now I'm working as a professional and just am reflecting back on my youth, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I cared so much about certain things, and now it doesn't even matter. So maybe if you are an art student or you're someone that is thinking about getting into art, some of the things I can talk about will be, I guess, liberating for you to hear or comforting for you to hear. So of course, like I mentioned, art students are just incredibly studious, and with that also comes the tendency to overwork. I'm looking at my 21-year-old self sitting in the labs in like 2016 or so, when I would stay in the labs until 3 to 5 a.m., sometimes even 6 a.m., or just stay there until the actual morning came. So as a student, you will probably have a tendency to overwork, which makes sense because you get a lot of assignments that I don't even feel like you get this level of assignments in the professional world. I think I had more homework and things to do as an art student than an actual storyboard artist, because as a storyboard artist, I just did what my assignment was for the week, which was just one sequence. And if you're done for then. But if you're an art student, there's always things to add. You always gotta refine things. And if you're working on a student film, you're pretty much doing like the work of what an entire team at a studio would usually do by yourself. Or if you're doing like a, I guess, concentration on many paintings or illustrations, that's still so many works of art you have to pump out at a shorter time frame, because a school year is usually less than 1 year long, and you have to create these things really quickly while also learning and doing other assignments on top of it. So I think overworking, while it is normal as an art student, I don't know if schools can do something to address this, but it definitely is not the healthiest way to establish, habits when you are a young adult trying to transition into the real world, because I feel like you can also develop a lot of bad habits in this time period, which, I definitely did myself, where, again, I barely got any sleep. I would make very shitty diet decisions because I was always tired and I wasn't working out, and overall my physical health was not in the greatest shape, and thus that led to me not creating the best art. And I know that a lot of people think that you don't need to be in the greatest physical shape or health to make good art. There's a lot of people that, aren't, and they still make great art, which is true, but I feel like your mental health and your approach to your work and your ability to keep going with creating art is only better if you give yourself the space to remember to take care of yourself. This is just from my personal experience, but yeah, going back to art school days, a day in the night would look like me with a lot of other kids, like pulling all-nighters. We would all bring our blankets, our pillows into the labs, literally sleep on the Cintiq, which doesn't make sense because at that point you might as well just go back to your dorm and sleep if you're not gonna work. And just a lot of food and different odors and smells existing, and it just was not a fun time. A lot of art students also tend to be messy because because of this, because, you know, you're so focused on other things that seem so important to you at the moment that it seems like your personal life doesn't matter at all, which, you know, that's not true, but I also don't blame them for feeling that way, because sometimes school and the professional world and everything moving so quickly in life with technology advancements and industries always going through these major changes adds a lot of pressure on students who are trying to like have some hope for their future, and they want to do their best to ensure it. So they're spending all the time that they can now to, you know, make sure that they will be good in the future. But at the same time, it's just like, what good are you doing your future self if the you right now is not good? I definitely, again, have been through these phases, but I did at least like realize that while I was still in school and kind of turned it around, especially during my third year. I'll say my first 2 years of Cal Arts were absolute garbage, health-wise, overworking-wise, but third and fourth year, you know, were the times I became more lax, and I was like, you know what, I don't care. I'm just gonna, you know, leave the labs, go on a walk, and spend time with friends. So you have a lot of tunnel vision on your art and art career as a student versus an adult, also just because, again, the only thing you can think about is just your future and your career. And I feel like when you're a beginning entry-level like art student in your first year, for the most part, you're gonna be very intimidated by the future. You don't know what the future holds, and the only thing you can think about is just, am I going to get a job? Am I going to be able to live and support myself? These are definitely very important things, but I think because of that, there's just so much emphasis on your career that you forget about all of the other things that you will still need to take care of, and if you don't take care of them now, they're gonna hit you once you're in your adult years after you graduate. Because what I realize now as a professional artist that has worked in the animation industry, has worked in the publishing industry, has been on social media doing my own thing, like from these many things I've been a part of, I still realize that there's so much in my own life I have to take care of that will get in the way of your career. Like, you will go through these dramatic relationship changes if, I don't know, you break up with a friend or a significant other, or you move in with a significant other, or you get married, or your friends get married, you realize you want to travel like I do, which requires a lot of money, and you want to eventually live in your own home, or you have these other goals in life. Like, we all have different things we will want to achieve after art school, but it's hard to really see that while you're still a student. And once you're an adult, you're gonna realize, oh my god, there's other stuff I want. But now I lack the foundational basis of, you know, taking care of myself, balancing like finances, life, work, health, whatever. And now I have to do it while I have a art career as well. While during art school days, you don't really have to think about, you know, working a job as much. So there's a lot of different types of challenges that will appear when you're an adult that you will wonder, why didn't I just practice this a little bit in art school? So that's why, even though your personal life shit does not seem like they matter now in art school, they will eventually resurface later on. So yeah, that also brings me to the next point, which is competition is very limited to short-term goals amongst a lot of art students, meaning that, again, a lot of art students are going to be very competitive against one another. Like, y'all will be best friends and besties, but at the same time, you'll also be secretly hating each other. Not like maliciously, hopefully, but in a somewhat like healthy rivalry way, hopefully. So, you know, sometimes it's not healthy, but competition is always so focused on things that aren't even in the long term, such as, you know, again, landing a job, getting that internship, getting those connections. I remembered as an art student, it was always so, like, it felt like a competition to be like, oh yeah, I got to talk to so-and-so from Disney. Oh, I got to talk to this so-and-so famous comic artist on Instagram. I got lunch with them. Or you're like, oh, I was talking to this recruiter and it looks like I'm really getting this internship next summer. Or, you know, portfolio day. Everyone fucking hates portfolio day because it's the day that you look at everyone's name on a bulletin board and remind yourself that you suck. compared to everyone else. So I personally feel like while I don't think the competition has ever been like incredibly toxic to the point of, art students just doing the worst possible thing, like yes, there are moments where competition does get toxic, but at the same time, from my experience, I feel like a lot of art students have still tried their best to handle that type of competition with grace, but it still gets to your self-esteem and insecurities, So I'm here to tell you that internships will only matter for a very short period in your life, but then once you graduate 5 years later, whatever you interned at, like in your art student days, don't matter anymore. So, I worked at Cartoon Network as my very first internship, and that was a great experience. And in that time, it seemed like the biggest deal to me, and I was like very scared and intimidated by all of the professionals surrounding me while I felt like a little loser. And, when I was at Disney, I felt like hot shit, and I was like, oh my god, I like love being in this environment. I have so many cool friends. And then now I'm like, that shit doesn't matter, because what are those experiences doing to serve me today? Really nothing much other than fond memories. Those internships will probably help you for your first 1 or 2 entry-level jobs in the industry, whether it even be an illustration or some other graphic design job, but they won't matter to you after you've probably worked your 3rd year of your official job anymore. It's just kind of more like those were what were helping you get in, but they're not gonna be serving you anymore after maybe 3 to 5 years when you're moving on with life and moving up the ladder of whatever corporate world you're in, or whatever, I guess, independent artist life you're in. No matter which path you go, and as you're moving along, you're gonna look back and be like, wow, I can't believe I focused on internships so much. The same goes for other things like school shows or scholarships, which, scholarships are nice because they are financial assistance, and they do again matter for that time period when you need it to get through school, which, I was really also grateful for getting a scholarship from Cartoon Network, but at the same time, that money was very helpful for school, for sure. But, in terms of the recognition and that stuff, like if you feel like, oh, this is something I could totally say and it's gonna make me still get jobs in the future, well, it's not. No one's gonna care about that anymore after, again, a few years after you've gotten it. It'll just be a very nice and fond memory, and it still is an achievement, so don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to downplay these things that I'm talking about, because they are still most definitely achievements. It's just, I would say, if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to be like, oh my god, I gotta do this, I have to do this, don't, because whether if you get it or not, it won't matter after like 5 years from then. So other things like, school shows and CalArts, we had the producers show, and I always feel like that was a thing where a lot of art students also huddled to be like, oh my gosh, did I get in? Did I get into that show? And again, it's a really great achievement if you do get into the show, because you get your work showcased to a lot of animation studios, but at the same time, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if you don't, because you can still probably land a job and have a really great career even if you don't get in either one of the years or all 4 years. I don't know. It's just something where in the moment it's nice when it happens. In the future, it'll be a very nice, fond memory. So there's so many other things about being an art student that just totally was like so annoying, I guess, such as stealing pens in the labs. Like, I used to just have to fear for my pen's life anytime I stepped away from my computer when I was working in the labs, when I was working on student films. And art students, they are out for the hunt. They will fucking do what it takes. Like, we're in the Hunger Games or some shit, where I remember, a few times I walked out to take a break, go to the restroom, and when I came back, I could not see my pen, and my friend told me that this person stole my pen. And, I don't know why they didn't say anything about it, but it was just something that happens. And, again, art students are vicious. I don't know if this is something that would happen in the professional world, because it hasn't happened to me, but it's also just a very small thing. There's also other small things about being an art student, like forming cliques, but that's like in any other school. But very specific to art students is that they're very judgmental of art styles, or even very judgy of internet artists, because they're not like traditional artists who got into an art school and there's something traditional happening with their lives. I feel like I just noticed this through hearing other people talk about other artists when I was a student. Maybe times are better now and people are a lot more understanding of internet artists now that social media is up and coming, so maybe those art students are now learning to take back what they say. But at the same time, a lot of art students were just generally very judgmental of other art students' art styles, because there usually tends to be a style that is more sophisticated or more, respected, usually for those art students that tend to be more experimental, but also have a very good grasp of foundations and anatomy, and people who just really have a good understanding of fine arts and can also play with experimentalism have been, some of the more well-respected art students, at least from my experience. And I think that's great that, they have great art styles. But with that comes some judgy behavior towards art students that don't have that same style or go for something more safe, vanilla, traditional Disney, anime, traditional Western, whatever, commercialized art, which, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. But I don't think that it's something that should prevent art students from befriending one another or getting to know one another. I don't know, again, what things are like right now in art school, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a thing where students still compared their works against one another to see who had a better style and would judge those who really didn't have anything special going on. Because, we're all in this boat of trying to figure things out together, and I feel like there's always going to be, you win some, you lose some, so maybe those super experimental art students, they do great in school, but maybe it might be a little bit more difficult to land a job afterwards. And for those who got picked on in school for having a more, Western or anime basic commercial style, maybe it's easier for them to find a job afterwards. So there's always going to be a mixed bag of different outcomes for everyone, and just because your art or you as an art student is a certain way now doesn't always mean it's going to be that way forever. Just like how we used to think that a lot of these internet artists or people that we saw online who shared their art were our versions of celebrities, but then now as an adult you're just like, wow, we're all just human. What a concept. We all pay bills, we all have to make life decisions outside of art, we all have to pay either a rent or a mortgage. How crazy is that? So there's a lot of glorification going on when you're an art student, of course. I've been there. Like, I remember freaking the freak out when one of these famous internet artist at that time, Anthony Holden, who was like a comic artist, visited our school, and it was such a big deal to me that, he came, and we even grabbed yogurt together with some other art students afterwards. And now I'm that person that goes to do these talks at schools, and it's just crazy how you're just like, wow, I am now that person who went to art schools to do talks, and I don't really feel like that glorified pedestal that I used to view other guest speakers, when they came to school. Like, it is such a different perspective once you're on the other side, I guess. But of course, it takes being on the other side or finishing art school, graduating, working your first few jobs, and doing your own personal projects for you to fully understand that. So again, I don't blame art students at all for, exhibiting certain habits or behaviors, because I've been there before. I get it. I guess this video is just more so for anyone who kind of feels like they're stuck with these feelings and don't know what to do with them. I'm here to tell you that those feelings will eventually come to an end, and there is more to life than just being an art student or being in art school. That was actually one of the things that I really enjoyed from the talk that Anthony Holden came to CalArts to talk about when I was an art student, which I really appreciated, because he talked a lot about how there's so much more to life than just art, and his basic recommendations for art students was to remember to go out and live life and form friendships and relationships with others and have life experiences experiences that you could bring back to your art. And a lot of these artists who, I guess, talked about these sorts of things are why I kind of live my life a little bit like that, because when they came to my school and talked about that, I really resonated with it. And now as a working professional, I really want to carry out what I learned from them, which is why, again, art school is not always bad. It does create a lot of opportunities, but there's also going to be a lot of times where you might feel these negative or intimidating things that make you question if you really belong in art school. But trust me, it's all temporary. It'll all come to an end eventually. And this is just why, I guess, art students scare me. I don't know. They scared me when I was there. They still scare me now, because it's kind of hard to really like make people feel a certain way until they get to that side, which is actually graduating. So until then, maybe get back to this video after you graduate and tell me how you feel about life and stuff. If, you know, you find out that, hey, everything that I worried about in art school doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, I don't know. This is kind of a little bit of a rant slash story time sketchbook. I hope you enjoyed this video of me drawing these flight attendants. It was actually really fun to explore their different types of uniforms and get back to working together with my Sakura Micron pen, which comes full circle with me talking about art school and finally getting these pens again. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. Check out Succubish's Volume 1 down below, and I'll see you all in the next one.